Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Amber Hines, and I'm the owner of Ashbur. We specialize in Medicaid compliant annuities across the country, and we are happy that you are here with us today. Today, we have attorney Todd Watley, who is a certified elder law attorney. He's going to be presenting on the topic of pre-planning for Medicaid and solving for an irrevocable trust, when to use an irrevocable trust. Todd did a part 1 to this webinar in the month of January, just talking about what an irrevocable trust is, and we had a lot of interest in that webinar as well as a lot of questions on the topic. So I think this is a timely part 2 webinar to answer the question of when to use an irrevocable trust. If you have any questions during today's webinar, you can type those into the questions tab of the GoToWebinar dashboard. And then also, if you're interested in a copy of the handouts from Todd's presentation, those are also in the GoToWebinar dashboard under the handouts portion. And with that, Todd, I'm going to let you go ahead and take things over. Thank you for being with us today.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Amber. I always appreciate presenting for you. And yeah, we get lots of good questions and stuff. And so I am assuming, hang on, I just got a big old screen of me that I don't need to see. Okay, there we go. Okay, so yeah, this is part 2. So I'm hoping a lot of y'all attended last month. If you didn't, it's okay. You will need to, if you're not familiar with these trusts, you're going to need to see last month so that you can learn the basics of it. Today, I'm assuming that you know the basics, and today's webinar is on who it's for and how to sell it. So I will do a little bit of review just to kind of get everybody up to speed, but then I want to jump into it. And here we go. Okay, so recall from last month what you may call estate planning, what a lot of attorneys may call estate planning. As an elder law attorney, I call that a Medicaid pre-planning meeting, okay? Because as an elder law attorney, we typically see older folks. If you're seeing a 45-year-old, okay, this is not a Medicaid pre-planning meeting particularly, but this is for the older client who comes in to see you to say, hey, I need to do estate planning. It is I think it's your obligation to at least bring up the issues of long-term care, of the expenses of not just dying, but getting old, becoming incapacitated, having a stroke, and needing help at home or in a facility. I think it's your job to bring that up to them and make them say, oh, no, 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 I don't want to talk about that. Let's just talk about death. Okay, fine. I brought it up. But I think you will learn that a lot of people, when you bring up the issue of long-term care, they're like, yeah, I've been thinking about that, but I didn't know that you were the person who could help me with it. It's like, I'm exactly the person who can help you with it. And so that opens the conversation to say, yeah, this is actually a Medicaid pre-planning meeting. A big part of that planning is the Irrevocable Asset Protection Trust, okay? That's what we're going to talk about today. It does a lot and it should cost a lot. You should charge handsomely for this. How much should it cost? I charge twice my current revocable living trust package. Okay. I just take that and double it because it is a little more work, funding and answering questions, and your liability on this is greater because if you messed up somehow in getting this trust funded quickly after you did it, your 5-year look back for Medicaid starts not when you create the trust, but when you fund the trust. And if you've forgot to do a deed, or if for some reason you did something wrong that this trust was not fully funded, you've delayed qualifications. If they need nursing home care within the next 5 years, you've delayed by a number of months them getting on Medicaid because you've extended the 5-year look back. So there's more liability, there's more work, you should charge more. Okay. You can also charge, I think, what is legitimately 1 month's worth of nursing home care. Whatever your local nursing home expense is, this trust is worth one of those months, okay, because it gets them qualified for the rest of their life and they don't have to pay that monthly fee fully once they do this and once you help them through this. So charge appropriately. So just so you know, I am Todd Watley. I'm a certified elder law attorney. I've been doing this. I just passed my 24-year mark. I'm super, 25 is going to be really cool, but I just passed 24. I still practice and I do coaching. I help attorneys become elder law attorneys, help them through tough situations, or just get them going from knowing very little to being proficient, successful attorneys. And I love what I do. And if you have questions on that, please let me know and I would love to work with you. So, what are we going to cover today is who is the best client for the Asset Protection Trust? This isn't for everyone. And some of my coaching folks will call me and it's like, I presented the Asset Protection Trust and they didn't buy it. And I said, well, tell me the facts. And it's like, well, yeah, they don't have enough money. That just doesn't make sense. And so you have to pick who the right person is. And once you can find that right person, the last part of this presentation is going to show you how to sell it. And I have a really good success rate because you're able to present what this trust does in practical language. And people are like, yeah, why would I not do that? I was like, yeah, I know. So we're going to cover who it's for and how to sell it, some key concepts there. All right, a little bit of review here. Let's go back and just go through this very quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in review, but I want you to understand this. So the solution doesn't change. When we're looking at a proactive pre-planning for Medicaid, the solution doesn't change. You have to get rid of assets, preferably in an irrevocable trust is the best way to do this to protect the clients when planning ahead. Okay, this unless they've got a lot of money that they can pay 5 years and you still protect, this is typically not for the person going into the nursing home. This is for the person who's fine and dandy, not looking at nursing home care anytime soon. Those are the ideal clients. Your work as the attorney comes in recognizing when this person needs it and designing the appropriate trust for them to make sure it does exactly what you say that it's going to do and meets their needs. The challenge here is helping the client understand the power of this type of planning. Okay, this is great planning. This is what they need. They need to do this, but it's a little scary. It's an irrevocable trust. It's transferring large sums of money that they've worked hard their entire life for, and they need to understand the benefit of that, the pros and cons of it, but particularly the pros to say, this is what we're doing. You need this, and it's your job as the attorney to educate them to the point of knowing that they need to do this. However, you can't overwhelm these people because if you go into too much detail, if you talk too much about taxes and just go into the nitpicky of this trust, uh, I have seen people just, nope, sorry, mind blown, I'm leaving. No, we're not doing this. And so you're doing them a disservice when you do that, when they don't do the trust because they need this trust. They need to do it, and it's your job. The challenge is educating them to say, yeah, you need it, and give them enough information so they're like, yeah, that sounds great without blowing their minds. Why this matters. By planning early, families can save more of their estate when the time for care comes. Okay, it's just pure and simple. We can do more with this trust. We can protect larger sums of money than we can with the crisis case. Okay, even a married case where we can do the annuities, and you should do the annuities in those crisis cases, but we're able to protect much more money using this trust. So let's go back and talk about Grant real quick. He's a great example. Grant comes in to see you for estate planning. He's not thinking long-term care. He's not thinking irrevocable trust. He mentions that he has a revocable trust that needs some changes. Grant is 70 years old, still plays tennis 3 times a week. I threw that fact in there to say he's probably pretty healthy. Okay. If he's playing tennis 3 times a week, he's up and going and doing and probably healthy and not going into the nursing home within the next few weeks. Okay. And he has a girlfriend he's been seeing for the last 2 years, but there's no plans to marry. Okay. Just the girlfriend. Grant lost his wife 5 years ago to cancer. So Grant has a home that is worth 675,000 and total liquid assets of 315,000. He wants to revise his current trust to provide for the girlfriend some money, but then leave everything else to his children. Grant has income of $4,500 and is easily able to live off of that without having to dip into his savings or his current assets. Okay. And that's a key point. And we will get to that in just a second. So we know that we have a solution for Grant. At age 70, a conversation about long-term care and how is he going to pay for it is appropriate. I think it's mandatory. I think you just like I ran it on just previously, it's your job to bring it up, to at least bring it up and let them say, nah, I don't want to talk about that. Okay. Document in your notes that you did bring it up. He did not want to talk about it because I think there can be some, not much, but a little bit of liability that if the family comes to you and say, look, he was 70, he was healthy, and when he was 72, he had a stroke and went into the nursing home and we lost almost everything. Wasn't there something that you could have done at 70 that you didn't do? And you're like, well, yeah. And if you don't have documentation that you brought it up and he refused to talk about it, eh, I mean, number one, you just feel bad. But number two, I think there could possibly, in a stretch, be some liability there. And it's like, just bring it up. Just say, hey, a lot of clients in your situation are concerned about long-term care. Have you thought about it? Is it a concern? And I will tell you, way more than half will say, yeah, I've been thinking about that, but I didn't know that you were the person to bring this up to. And it's like, yeah, here I am. Let's talk about it. All right. He may be a great candidate for long-term care insurance. At 70, you're not too old. Okay. It could be out there. But we know that we can design an irrevocable trust that will hold some of his assets and definitely hold his home and give him the peace of mind that no matter what happens with his health, the assets in that irrevocable trust are protected. That's a huge um, load off their mind. It's peace of mind. It's insurance. It's just, this is what it's going to do. All right. Number one, who is the best client? Typically, this trust is not for the client with low assets. Okay. And you'll see when we design how much goes in, how much doesn't go in, you need some assets, and we will cover that. Um, the estate needs to be big enough to keep out some funds to get through the 5-year look back, and I will help you calculate that in just a second. Okay. Not all of the money goes in the trust. And so that's what one of the rejections I get. People are like, oh, no, I don't want to do an irrevocable trust because I don't want to lose control of all of my money. I'm like, well, you won't lose control of all of your money. You will lose control of some of your money. Okay. And once you clarify that they're like, oh, okay, well, let's talk. And you may do a revocable living trust and an irrevocable trust in this situation if their distribution plan is so convoluted that the money that doesn't go into the irrevocable trust that can easily go into a revocable living trust, knowing it's countable. We will need to look at this when you go into the nursing home, but the money that's in the irrevocable trust is absolutely protected. It's done. And so you're not completely breaking these people. You should not completely break these people for two reasons. Number one, they may need nursing home care during the next 5 years, and they need some money to spend. They don't want to have to go ask the trustee of the irrevocable trust if they can have $5,000 to go fix the engine in their car, or they need $1,200 to go buy some tires, or they want to go on a trip. They should not have to go begging for money. Once you do this, keep enough money out so that they can live their life. It's just excess, and that's a very fluid term to some people. The excess goes into the trust, right? People are driving me insane. Okay, who is the best client? So not everything goes in the trust. Then there's enough assets. So once you decide how much they want to keep, then what goes into the trust? If it's not much money, this trust isn't worth it. Okay. If you're only putting 50 or $100,000 in there, it's like, eh, you know, yes, we could do it for $50,000, but it's like, really, do you want to spend 10 or $12,000 on this trust to protect 50? And it's like, well, some people will, but in my mind, that just doesn't make sense. Okay. So, real quick, how much do we keep out? There's a formula for that. You look at your typical nursing home monthly fee. Okay. Let's just, use $10,000, and you subtract out the income, because when they go into the nursing home, their income will go to pay for their care, typically, unless they're married. But this is just a general rule. You can do this quickly, sitting at the table with your client, to say, here's how much you need to keep out of the trust. So the nursing home minus the income is the deficiency. You take the deficiency each month, multiply it by 60, and that's the big number that is needed if they needed care from day one. It's like, if you had a stroke the day after we did this trust and you needed nursing home care from day one, we're going to need this many dollars to get you through the 5-year look back so that we can then apply for Medicaid. So if we take this and apply it to grant, I didn't do a slide on this. I can't do equations very well. So just make a note here, put this in your mind. It's not difficult. So if his nursing home care, let's say we're meeting with Grant, the typical nursing home at this point is $10,000 a month. He made $4,500 a month. So therefore we would reduce. So that comes out to a $5,500 deficit each month. Assuming he needed care from day one, 5,500 times 60 is $330,000. Okay. He has 615 in liquid assets. So therefore, if we kept out the 330, that means like 285,000 would go into the trust. Well, that's a decent amount of money, plus the $675,000 house would go in there. And just a quick note, if you understand Medicaid, you'll understand this, but people may fight you on this. It's like, why do I need to put the house in the trust? Because the house is a non-countable asset for Medicaid. Yeah, but there's this thing called a state recovery. And so you have to explain that to them, to say, yeah, the house is protected. You could qualify owning a $675,000 house, but Medicaid puts a lien on it to get their money back. Putting it in this trust fixes that. We're already going to put 285,000 in this trust. Let's just go ahead and put the $675,000 house in the trust and be done with it. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So with Grant's situation, I think it makes sense to do this trust to keep out 330, put 285 in. All right. Now, that's the top amount. That's like worst case scenario. You probably won't need that much money from day one, but this is a starting number. And so many times people, you say, look, you play tennis 2 days a week. I doubt you, unless you fall and hit your head tomorrow and you're in a coma. I don't think you're going to need nursing home care for quite a few months to years. And so we don't have to keep out 330, but just let them understand that's a possible number. And don't forget, we can always go to the trustee. If you design this like I talked about last week, make a family member the trustee and a lifetime beneficiary. So as the trustee and the lifetime beneficiary, they can pull money from this trust and give it to themselves. And if they so choose, out of the goodness of their heart, they can then give money to Grant. So if he did decide to keep much less, he feels comfortable with being at $100,000 or whatever. So you put $515,000 into the trust. He keeps out 100. If he's comfortable with that, hey, we've protected $500,000 plus the $675,000 house. That trust is doing some amazingly good things. But I will tell you, most people don't feel comfortable with just 100,000. What if he says, "Well, I don't feel comfortable with 330, but I want to keep 400 or 500?" It's like, well, okay, we're still protecting the house, but we're not putting much money in the trust. But if that's what you want to do, sure, we can do it. It's the client's trust. You ultimately have to do what they want to do, but they need to be educated to know here's what ideally should work. Okay. What does the client feel comfortable going to? Meaning, I had one client I was doing this, and I think he had 2.5 million, almost $3 million. And I said, okay. And thankfully, most of it was after tax money, and I'll go into that in just a second. And I was like, okay, Mr. Jones, we do this trust. How much would make you comfortable to keep out of your 2.5 million, and let us put everything else in to the trust? He said, to be comfortable, 2.5 million. I was like, come on. He kind of smiled. I said, why do you need 2.5 million? He said, well, I might want to go to Italy. And the kids were like, Dad, you've never been to Italy. You've never talked about Italy. He's like, well, I may want to go. And I said, well, I'll tell you, it doesn't cost $2.5 million to go to Italy. So finally he left. Like I said last time, most of these clients will not hire in this first meeting. They're like, boy, this is a lot. This is uncomfortable. I don't like to be down to $300,000, whatever. And so they'll typically say no the first day. They'll go home and think about it. This family went home, talked about it. And I think he came back and his number was like 700,000. I said, okay, well, if you need nursing home care, since you're married, yeah, we can protect 700,000. We'll do the annuity. We'll call Amber. She'll do the annuity for us. Everything will work, but that's a lot of money. But that was his number. He's like, I don't want to get under 700,000. Okay. And you just have to think about this is hard for clients. They've built up this number for their entire life. Most of these people were broke when they got married, and they have scrimped and saved, and they've grown this pile of money, and their identity sometimes is attached to that $2.5 million. They feel really good about it. They're like, man, that gives me comfort, and you're asking me to get down to 300,000. It's a big step. And if they give you friction, if they're like, man, no, no, can't do that. Don't lose hope. Let them go. Let them go home. Let them think about it. I've had clients think about it 2 weeks. I've had clients think about it 2 years. And they start mulling over what you say. What's in the trust is protected. You don't have to worry about losing it to long-term care. They'll start thinking about that, and it that the shock of going from 2.5 million to 300,000 or whatever starts to numb down just a little bit. And they're like, okay, I get it. They'll come back. They'll come back and say, I didn't like this when you first said it. I said, I know, but I've thought about it, and yeah, here's my number. Here's where I want to get down to. Let's do it. You're like, okay, you do it. You're 2 weeks or 2 years later than you would have been, but that's okay. Okay. These people typically aren't going into the nursing home, and it's okay. The key phrase that you want to use when you're talking about this, deciding how much goes in versus how much you keep out, the key phrase, say this precisely: what is in the trust is protected for your family, and what is not will have to be spent on nursing home care or something else. That registers in their head. They're like, okay, I get it. I get that what is in this trust is protected, and I want my money to be protected. I want it to go to the kids without worrying about it. All right. Now, the exception to the low asset rule is there's a home, a farm, there's acreage, there's something out there that the family doesn't want to lose. It could be a $200,000 home, but it's like, this was great granddad's home. and we don't want to have to sell it to pay the Medicaid lien. We don't want to lose it. We are adamant that we don't want to lose this. And there may be no other assets out there, but the family, the kids typically are willing. It's like, put it in the trust. If that will protect it, put it in the trust, and we'll pay for the nursing home for the 5 years if he needs it, because we want to protect this. And so there's been a lot of times I was hesitant to even bring up the irrevocable trust because, like, you don't have much money, but there's this piece of real estate that is crucial to them, and they definitely don't want to lose it. And therefore, this trust works. We put it in there, wait the 5 years, or if it's a very low value asset, you may not have to wait 5 years. You just do the math on that and do it. And this is particularly true if they have the home, which is not countable, but they have other real estate, rent houses, things like that. Even if they don't have much money, but they have this thing that they don't want to sell in a crisis because it's more than 140 or $150,000, it's going to cause them to never qualify for Medicaid, even if they're married. It's a problem asset. Put it in the trust and be done with it. Okay. So they don't have to be rich, but they're typically rich. Although if the family is hung up on this one piece of real estate, they need a trust. Okay. And they will pay for a trust. All right. We've talked about low value assets. How big is too big? Okay. I don't have a good answer on this. This is a moral question that you're going to have to answer in your head. Okay. This is, and I talk to my coaching people, I talk to my associate attorneys, I tell them, look, there is no absolute number, but, and just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do something. Okay. I think it should be presented to the 5, 10, 15, $20 million client. It's like, okay, but if you have $10 million, should you go on Medicaid? Should you expect the taxpayers to pay for your care? And I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying that's a thing that you've got to work out within yourself, and you've got to figure that out and answer that. I don't have an answer. Okay. My number, my personal, this is just me, that if a client is 3 million, probably $4 million and above, I get a little squirmish. I'm just like, I'm I, I'm all for leveling the playing field. Someone has scrimped and saved 500, 600, 800,000, $1 million. I should be able to get them on Medicaid just like someone who did not scrimp and save $1 million. They blew their money. They did not save. They've always been poor. They go into the nursing home. Absolutely, we'll pay for your nursing home care. But the person who made the very same money but did not blow their money, scrimped and saved their money, it's like, oh, you have $400,000. You can't go to the nursing home. No, that's what we do. We level that playing field to say, hey, this person who is horrible with money gets Medicaid, but so does this person who scrimped and saved $400,000. They get Medicaid. But that 400,000, where does that number quit? That's what you have to figure that out. Okay. That's my number, but you have to work that out. All right. I just wanted to bring that up. So how do we sell this? How do we convince the client to spend $7, 8, 10, $12,000 on a trust? You focus on the different requirements of the two government entities we are working with here. And those two are the IRS. The IRS encourages you to keep your property until you pass away, the transfer upon death. You get benefits for that. And I'll go over those here in just a second. So you're saying, look, you own this piece of property that you paid $20,000 for and is now worth $1 million. That's a lot of capital gains. And if to not pay capital gains on that, you've got to hang on to this until your death. And when it transfers because of your death to your kids, they pay no tax on it. That's a great thing. That's a few $100,000 in taxes that we can mess up very easily. Okay. So the IRS encourages you to hang on to your assets until death. But then Medicaid is, you can't have assets and qualify. You've got to get rid of everything. Well, it's like, well, shoot, Do I hang on to it and never go on Medicaid and pay 10, 12, 15,000 bucks a month? Or do I give everything away, let the kids worry about the taxes later so I can get this benefit of 10, 12, 15,000 dollars a month? Which one do I choose? Ta-da. You don't have to choose either, okay? The other selling point in this also is for married cases, you understand if you've seen my webinars before, Amber's done other webinars on how to get married people qualified, you know we can protect fairly large sums, but where does that money go? It goes to the community spouse. And I think Congress knew exactly what they were doing. They're like, sure, we'll do spousal protection rules so that you can use these rules and this person needs care. The person not in the nursing home needs to be protected. And so we'll let you do all these fancy things to get the money to her, typically, so that she can live. And we use those rules really for her benefit. But what if she needs care? Okay. She has all this money and we do half a loaf, basically. We can protect half of it. With this trust, we get both of them qualified, not qualified, but much closer. So the $2 million client comes in and they're willing to put $1.5 million into their trust. Now, even if they didn't spend a dime of that $500,000, 5 years from now, the husband goes in, it's much easier to do a spousal case with $500,000 than with 2 million. And if she needs nursing home care, if we did half a loaf, we lose 250. Whereas with 2 million, she would never go on Medicaid. That's just too much money. So with this trust, we're getting married people much closer to the goal line than not doing the trust. So that's another huge selling point, particularly for your higher asset people to say, sure, we might be able to protect this in a crisis, but she's going to own it all. And then she needs nursing home care, we're out of luck. Okay. But this trust fixes that. So keeping your assets to make IRS happy, you have to keep your assets. So that gets us a step up in basis. Losing this is a capital gains tax to your heirs between what, and this is what I'm saying. These are the words. So I've typed this out as me saying it to the client. Okay. Losing this benefit is a capital gains tax to your heirs between what you paid for it and what they sell it for. So you pay 20,000, it's now worth $1 million. So that's $980,000 worth of capital gains. And that capital gains could be 25%. So that's almost a $250,000 tax bill hanging out there that if we don't protect this and we do get you on Medicaid, by giving this away now, we've just pushed a $250,000 tax hit on your kids. That's not good. I don't know that you're going to get $250,000 worth of benefit from Medicaid. You could, but it would be kind of difficult. So comparing losing this 250 in tax benefit versus how much Medicaid you would get, I think the tax benefit is going to be bigger. So we don't win there. The 121 exclusion, if this property needs to be sold, the trust can sell it, um, and we still get this benefit. And so if you give it to the kids and then they sell it, we lose the 121 exclusion. And a lot of states, once you hit 65, they will freeze your real estate tax increases so that they never have to go that. That's not a huge benefit, but you would be amazed at how picky some of our clients are. So, well, I don't want my real estate taxes to go up. And in some states, that's a big deal. Okay. It can be a big deal. Where I live, real estate's not a big deal. Real estate tax is not a big deal. So now, what you say is, so the problem is, keeping these assets to protect all of these tax benefits, you get no Medicaid to pay for your care, which will cost blank, whatever your local nursing home cost is, 8,000, 10,000, whatever, per month for the rest of your life. So yeah, we're going to protect these tax benefits, but you're never going to get Medicaid the way that you are. So then it's like, okay, we want to qualify for Medicaid because you want help paying for this nursing home bill. Then um, after 5, so we make a gift, we get rid of all these assets with our sole mind on just Medicaid. Okay, to qualify for Medicaid, you've got to get rid of these assets. So we transfer them, which creates probably a 5-year penalty. And therefore, but at the end of 5 years, by George, Medicaid's going to pay our bill. And that's a great benefit. Pay for care, the nursing home, and typically medications. Okay. Again, know the cost of your nursing home and say, this is a benefit of nursing homes in our area cost X, and you could easily live 3 years in a facility, maybe 5 or 10. So just do the math and say, if we want to keep these tax benefits, you're going to have to pay X number of dollars times 36 or times 60 or times 120. Okay. Do the math so that they can see those numbers. And the way you sell this is to constantly quote, if they don't do this trust, if they don't work with you, here's how much you're going to pay. $250,000 in taxes, $8,000 a month for 36 months is $250,000, $300,000 times 120. I can't do that math, but that's a lot of money. You're showing them without your solution, here's how much you're looking at. So then the solution is, okay, you've got these two polar opposite, keep it, don't keep it. Keep it for tax benefits, don't keep it for Medicaid benefits. So how in the world do we make both of these government entities happy by requiring absolute opposite things? Ta-da, this trust. So this irrevocable trust meets the IRS and the Medicaid requirements. And if you present it like that, people are scared to death of the government. The IRS, you got to keep it. Medicaid, you got to get rid of it. How in the world can we create something that tells the IRS, yep, they still own it, tells Medicaid, nope, we don't own it? And I always say, after I use those exact words, I say, I'm not smart enough to figure this out, but there's some people at Elder Council, Interactive Legal, who have figured this out, and they've created a trust that I pay good money to implement in my practice, and they've figured it out to get the benefits from both. We tell the IRS, yep, she still owns it. We tell Medicaid, nope, she doesn't. I can go into extreme details, but for you as the client, that's what you need to understand. We tell the IRS, yes, you own it. We tell Medicaid, no, you don't. So, terminology real quick, okay? Um, Typically, it's just commonly known as the Asset Protection Trust. I think Elder Council has trademarked that, and so be careful using that terminology if you don't have Elder Council. But nothing says you can't create your own name for it. It's a defective grantor trust. Don't use that name. But you know, make up a name for it. If you don't have Elder Council, make up a name for it and just use that. That describes what this trust does. All right. If you don't use their software, make it up. Now, what kills the sale? Okay. I think I'm pretty much on time. Stinking IRAs. Okay. So when most of the estate is in tax deferred assets, this becomes you almost can't do it, because the transferring anything over about $400,000 puts them at the maximum tax rate of 40%. Okay, plus state tax can easily get this to 50%. You need a whole lot of Medicaid coverage to cover up, to balance out a 50% tax on an IRA. All right. So the solution is, if you sit down with someone and it's like, okay, you've got a $750,000 house and $1 million in investments. How much of that one of the first questions you need to ask is, how much of those investments is in IRAs, 401ks? And if it's $990,000, you're like, okay, we're done. I can't help you. That IRA was really good when you were working. You didn't pay taxes on it. That probably made sense then, but it's killing you right now, because it just doesn't make sense to put $1 million into this trust and lose $500,000 in taxes. Okay. It just doesn't make sense. However, if it's not everything, but let's use the $1 million example. If they're comfortable with keeping out 300 or $400,000, okay, and 300,000 of that is in IRAs, fine. Keep the IRAs plus another $100,000. Put everything else in the trust. Keep your IRAs. Start living off of your IRAs. And they're like, oh, but there's taxes. Okay. I tell them, yes, when you start drawing that out, there's going to be taxes, but someone has to withdraw the money and pay the tax. It might as well be you. With the new tax laws, the most we can do that typically is about 10 years. So you tell them, well, you can draw it out as slow as you want to and spread that tax out. If we leave it to your kids as this, they're going to have to draw it out within 10 years. So let's put everything else in your house. Let's put all the other investments in this trust. You keep your IRAs and just simply live off of your IRAs. Yes, you're going to pay the tax, but you'll pay less tax probably than your kids do. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. All right, Amber, look at that. 11:42. Are there questions?
Awesome. Let me see. I know we have a couple of questions here. One of the questions is, doesn't the real estate have to be owned free and clear in order to put it into the trust?
Typically, yes. You will really now. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Forget Germain, forget that tax law. Technically, since they get to live there and we put language in the trust that they get to live there, I think technically you could make the argument that the mortgage should not be called on it, but I don't mess with that. Yeah. As a general practice tip, you want to make sure the house is paid off. So just take some of the assets, pay off the mortgage. It's free and clear. Now you can put it into the trust. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay, there's a question here about what if the potential client thinks their savings should be paid to the nursing home? They feel like they're quote unquote cheating.
Okay. You will have that. And I kind of breezed by one of my most favorite or famous newspaper articles that I wrote is one way. And then when I do public presentations and there's someone out there, you can always see them the entire time through your presentation. They're just kind of giving you this look like, really? And at the end, they're like, sir, how do you explain someone with $4 or $5 or $600,000 getting on Medicaid? That's just ridiculous. And you're like, okay, go with me for just a second. Let's talk about couple A and couple B. All right. Couple A and and Mr. A and Mr. B and Mrs. A and Mrs. B are almost exactly the same level of education. They work at the same place. They make the same money every paycheck. Everything's the same. Couple A saved their money, did not go on fancy vacations, did not buy fancy cars, did, you know, lived in their house, the same house for 40, 50 years, their entire life. Okay. Mr. B, not saying this is wrong. I'm not passing judgment, but Mr. B and Mrs. B, they love their money. They got paid. They went on vacation. They bought new cars, bought a big house, just had a blast with their money and did not save money. Okay. So now 50, 60 years down the road, Mr. A and Mr. B both have a stroke. They go into the same hospital, they go into the same rehab, and they make the exact same progress. At the end of rehab, the social worker comes up to Mr. B and says, or Mrs. B, and says, okay, now he's going into the nursing home. He can't go home. How many assets do you have? She's like, we have nothing. She's like, okay, you're on Medicaid. The same social worker goes to Mrs. A and says, okay, Mrs. A, your husband is out of rehab. He needs to be in the nursing home. How many assets do you have? She's like, well, we have $400,000 in the bank. Oh, that's a problem. You don't qualify for Medicaid. You've got to spend down to $150,000 before you can qualify. Is that fair? Okay. Does that make sense? Because of lifestyle choices, we're going to treat these people differently. And so I tell people that's why I do what I do. And Mrs. Whoever in the audience who's like, do you think that's right? She's probably got $4 or $5 or $600,000 in the bank. And when you present it that way, that someone who lived the exact same life or made the exact same money as you did, but was not careful with their money. They enjoyed it and had fun with it. And now we, the taxpayers, gladly pay for his nursing home care. But now you need nursing home care. You have to pay for it out of your pocket because you didn't have fun with your money. That hits them. They're like, oh, I see what you're saying now. And they become a client. And so that, I know that's a very long answer, but I wrote that up in the paper and I got so much response. So I never thought about it that way. But yeah, that's what we do as elder law attorneys is we level the field to say, yeah, you scrimped and saved and did not have quote fun with your money. You didn't blow it. We're going to level the playing field so you get the same care as this person who made exactly the same money.
Perfect.
I get worked up
Todd,
over
that
detail.
that person that asked the question is asking if they can get a link to that article you're referring to.
It's no, that was years and years ago, and I've just type that up. Just I mean, go to Chat GPT and put that in, and it'll write the article for you. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what I say. I either say it or type it or whatever, and it works. It gets people's attention.
Okay. There's a question about if somebody funds the trust, but in 3 years adds more assets to the trust without letting you know, does this restart their 5-year clock?
Well, yes, there is a 5-year look back on those later transfers. You still have the original 5-year look back on the original assets, but those new transfers do go out further. You're at 61 months from the first gifts, that's over with, that's done, but you've still got these new transfers causing a problem. So yeah, I tell people fund this thing within the next month or two. Okay, I'll get your deed in there. I'll do that quickly. That's going to be done. But you've got to go to your accounts and write checks or do transfers or something and put it in this trust. And the quicker, the sooner, so we can know our 5-year clock is over 2 months from now. Put that on a calendar. Make sure the whole family knows. Don't apply for Medicaid before this date, and just know this is our golden date of when you can qualify for Medicaid.
Okay, and
Yeah.
then another one of the listeners pointed out, I think there's a misspelling in your email address. Just so that if anybody is emailing you, it's todd@theelderlawcoach.com. Just to point that out. I know your contact information is on the screen right now, but if anybody's trying to contact you, it's
Does
Elder
it
Law
say
Coach.
COASA? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
coach. COASA. Yeah.
Okay.
Todd@theelderlawcoach.com. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Then there's another question about should we let the property insurer know about the transfer into the trust and how does that usually work?
Yeah. You want title insurance, you want all of that. And so you may have to officially go through like a closing to get all that protected. But yeah, do let tell the family to let the title insurance and your homeowner's insurance know that it's now owned by a trust so that they can put that on the insurance policy.
Okay, and then another question, it's a multiple point question. It seems, it says, what happens in relation to tax consequences if we put the house into a trust and then years later sell the real estate, leaving part of the money in an investment account inside the trust, giving some of the money away to the kids and having the trustees give some to charity of the grantor's choosing?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, the transfer of the real estate into the trust is the date of that deed. What happens after that is does not affect the grantor's Medicaid status. That transfer to the deed gets it away from them. It's done. The trustee can then do what they want to with the money, with the house, whatever. Um, since there is the right to live there and things I talked about last week to maintain those strings with the IRS, you still get the 121 exclusion, all of that stuff when it sells because of the language that is in the trust.
Okay, perfect. I think those are all the questions that we had. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to type those in. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to myself or to Todd if you have any questions. Todd, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. If you want coaching and want to do what I think is the best job in the world, give me a call and see what I can do for you. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks,
awesome.
Amber. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Todd. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.